So in previous class, we have talked about classes and objects and how we can create objects of a class and how uh, through that particular object we can access the members of a class. So we have seen that, and what we have done, we have created a class, and then we have created another class. That class will serve as the main class for that example class, and we have created objects of that example class in the main class, where we have placed the main method and we have used that example class. So today we are going to explore more about classes. So the next concept that we are going to learn is called constructors. So you have heard that particular term constructor. It is basically used to create, as well as in the process of creating that particular object, we can initialize the instance variable of the object. So if we don't write our own constructor, so compiler will provide us a default constructor that doesn't take any parameter as a input to that particular constructor, and initialize the data members, or rather instance variables, to their default values. Okay, so the properties of constructor that you have heard in C++, all of them are applicable in Java as well. That means the constructor name should be the class name. So as you can see, that the class name is summation. So similarly, the constructor name is summation itself. And constructor doesn't return any value. That's why, or rather, it doesn't even return void. So we will not put any return type here. So as you can see, no return type here. And this is a parameterized constructor. So this is a parameterized constructor. That means we have some arguments passed within this particular constructor. So how to use this particular constructor? Very simple. To use this particular constructor, we have to write statement like this. So we have to create an object. So for that, this is the object name. So this is S, that is the object of class summation. And we have to use our new operator to create the object, and this particular constructor will be called using this constructor call. So you have to put the constructor name and you have to pass the actual parameters. So we know that in function, the arguments that are inside the function definition or at the function definition section are known as formal parameters, and the actual argument that we passed while calling that particular function is known as actual parameter. So so this is the formal parameters and these are the actual parameters. So this is how we can call a constructor. We can write or rewrite our default constructor as well. So for this particular class, the default constructor may look like this. So it doesn't take any value, but you can perform any type of operations in that particular constructor. So inside the class definition, you can add summation. So default constructor doesn't take any parameter. So this is the default constructor syntax. Now for definition, you must put this curly braces, and inside that either you can initialize these data members. So first is equal to 0 and second is equal to 0. Suppose we have initialized with 0. So you can initialize it by 10 as well. So we can do so this particular constructor will be called when we use a statement like say summation s1 is equal to new summation. So in this particular situation, s1 dot first will have 10, and s2 dot first, so not first, s1 dot second will have value 10. So these two values are being set using this particular statement, and when you use this particular statement, s dot first will have 6 and s dot second will have 28. So if you write first is equal to b and this is equal to a, that is also fine, and at that particular time 28, and this will be 6. So it depends on the developer who is developing that particular constructor, that what that particular constructor might do. So constructor is basically a special function that will be called when a new object is being created using a new operator. So that is a constructor, that a constructor will be called automatically while creating a particular object, and we are using, or the developers use this particular property to initialize that particular instance variables. So that is the thing. Just constructor is not meant to initialize the values. So as constructor are automatically called at the time of object creation, so that's why we can use that particular feature to initialize our data members. So this is constructor. So there are two type of constructors. So earlier in C++ you have heard three type of constructor. One is uh, default constructor, another one is parameterized constructor, and another one is copy constructor. So in this particular situation, in Java, as we don't have the concept of pointers, we don't have that type of constructor, like copy constructor is not available here. So we have this two type of constructor. Now we are looking into the overall concepts of object-oriented programming that are available in Java. That's why we are going to learn everything in brief. That means classes and objects, encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance, reusability, and all those things we are going to learn in just brief. Then we will discuss them in later classes, maybe in broader scenario. So we are just trying to understand what are the concepts, because we have already learned all these concepts in C++ as well. So we are just trying to recap what is going on, or what are different from C++ in Java. So you may know that polymorphism is an ability to take multiple forms, and in C++ we had function overloading. That means function with similar name can do multiple type of operations depending on whatever input we feed to that particular function. Similarly, we also had operator overloading feature that actually changes the meaning of an operator depending on the input, or depending on the operand that that particular operation or operator is working on. But in Java, it actually supports function overloading only. Here we call it method overloading, and we don't have any concept of operator overloading. Though Java inbuilt has this plus operator overloaded, and we have already seen that this plus operator is overloaded in case of string operations. So this plus operator can concatenate two strings. So that one operator overloading example is there. But we cannot define our own operator overloaded operators. So that is a system defined overloaded operator. So function overloading means a function can have same name, different data values. That means the function signature should be different. So how we can distinguish between different functions or different overloaded functions? So first of all, the first criteria has to be the number of arguments. So that particular criteria is satisfied in this particular scenario. So we have void receive int a and void receive int a int b. So those two number of operands are mismatched. So in this particular receive we have only one operand, and here we have two. So so first of all, the number of arguments or number of parameters will be checked. If they have equal parameters, then they will go for the type. So suppose here we have a float b. So int a comma float b. Suppose this is our function definition. So what will happen? It will check for the types. So this is int and this is float int. So after matching the type, it can distinguish that these two functions are different. And if the type is also same, that means suppose this is float. Suppose this is float. So int float float. So we have something like int float, something like this. So then it will check the sequence. In which sequence all type of datas are there as an input or as an argument to that particular function. So as it is int a and float b, and it is float a and int b, the signature will look like this. So receive int float and receive float int. So as the sequence of float and int is different in both these functions, so they can be distinguished as a different function. Now another interesting thing is that return type cannot distinguish overloaded function. So return type alone cannot distinguish overloaded function. So we cannot have two overloaded function having same number of arguments, same type of argument, and same sequence of those types, and have different return type. So they will not be distinguished. They will be ambiguous functions. So they will be ambiguous functions. Uh, so this is polymorphism. That means we can overload functions, and that is allowed in Java. If anyone has any question, they can raise their questions. I'm going little fast because these are the concepts that you have already learned in C++. So here the example is like this. This is also polymorphism where we have two different type of data. The number of argument is same, but the different type of data is there. So this is also a polymorphism. So that is what I was trying to say, that return type is not differentiable. Two functions having same return type, different return type for same number and type and sequence of the argument is not differentiable by the compiler. So now next second. বল। ও আচ্ছা। Okay. চ্যাটে লিখে পড়াস না, আমি চ্যাট দেখতে আবার অসুবিধা হয়। বুঝেছি, পিপিটি আমি দিয়ে দেবো, চাপ নেই। So now this is another concept and very important concept of any object-oriented programming or any object-oriented programming paradigm is inheritance. That means the ability to reuse something. So inheritance means acquiring the properties of another class. That means if we have some already written class, we can use those classes for our own purpose. So this kind of uh, inheritance. So this kind of inheritance is known as single inheritance, where we have a class, single class, say we call it a base class, and that is inherited by another class, say derived class. So the one that is the original class or from where we are acquiring the properties is known as the base class or superclass. And the one or the new one that has derived or that has acquired the properties of another class is known as derived class or subclass. Okay, so we have different type of inheritance that are supported by any object-oriented paradigm. So first of all is single inheritance, where we have this kind of scenario. That means one class is inherited by another class. So it could be a father-son relationship like that. Then we have this multi-level inheritance. In multi-level inheritance, we can have a scenario like this, like one class has inherited the properties of another class. In this particular scenario, father has inherited the properties of grandfather, and the son has inherited the properties of father. That means by default, it acquired the properties of grandfather as well, because father has already acquired the properties of grandfather, and now as son has acquired the properties of father, it has by default acquired the properties of grandfather. So this is multi-level inheritance. Then we have hierarchical inheritance. That means a father can have multiple sons. So son 1 will inherit the properties of father, son 2 will inherit the properties of father, and son 3 as well inherit the properties of father. So this type of inheritance is called hierarchical inheritance. And this is another one, multiple inheritance, and this particular inheritance is not supported by Java. So this particular inheritance is not supported by Java. Through classes, we can use interfaces to actually done this kind of activities. So through classes or by extending the classes, we cannot support this kind of architecture. That means multi-level or multiple inheritance is not supported through normal classes. We need the support of interfaces, and using interfaces, we can have this kind of architecture. And there is another one called hybrid inheritance, that is a combination of any of these four. So it might look like this. Suppose A, B, C, and D. So this particular part is hierarchical, and this particular part is multi-level. So we can have this kind of structure as well. So here some problems occurs. Actually, D will have copies of A twice in its particular variable. So I hope you have heard the term virtual functions and all this thing in C++ to tackle this kind of problems. So we will discuss all these things in details in later. So first of all, let's understand how we can actually কিছু বলছিস হ্যাঁ আমি তো প্রথমে ওই জন্যই ওটা দিইনি আমি বললাম এ বি সি আর ডি ওকে আমি এইটুকুটা রেখেছিলাম আর তারপরে সি প্লাস প্লাসের যে প্রবলেমটার কথা বললাম সেটার জন্য আমি এটা দিলাম যে যখন এই জিনিসটা আমরা দিচ্ছিলাম তখন অ্যাকচুয়ালি কি হচ্ছিল এই দিক থেকে আর এই দিক থেকে মানে ইন জেনারেল আমরা ইনহেরিটেন্সের কথা বলছি যে ডি উইল হ্যাভ বোথ দ্য কপিজ অফ এ মানে টু ডিফারেন্ট কপিজ অফ এ সো এটা সি প্লাস প্লাসের প্রবলেম ছিল আর আমি যখন ফার্স্ট এক্সাম্পল দিয়েছিলাম আমি এটা ছেড়ে দিয়েছিলাম বুঝা গেছে so let's see how we can implement this kind of inheritance in Java. So these subclasses have very different names, so many names. So sometimes they are called subclasses, sometimes they are called child class, sometimes they are called derived class. Similarly, superclass, parent class, base class, all those names are synonymous to each other. So this is an example of simple inheritance where we have created a class, father class. Suppose there are some content in that particular father class, and now if you want to extend that father class to create a new class, what you have to write? You have to write extends father. So we have to use this particular keyword to extend or to inherit a particular class that is already defined. So this is how using this extend keyword we can actually inherit the properties of father class, and all the properties that you have learned in C++ are applicable here. Like private members are not inheritable, protected member are inheritable, public members are also inheritable. So all those properties that you have learned in C++ are applicable here as well. So similarly for multi-level inheritance, uh, we can have a situation like this, like we have this particular class grandparent. So father has extended grandparent, and then class son has extended father. So this kind of situation is an example of multi-level inheritance. And you can also understand how the hierarchical option will look like. So it will be something like this, where we have a single father class and three different classes, son1, son2, and son3 has extended the father class. So, and all the properties of inheritance is applicable here as well. We can have uh, uh, I guess I have already said in earlier classes as well that we have we have four different specifiers. So one is private. So private means all the members of the class are only accessible inside the class. That means even creating a function, even if we create an object of that particular class, we cannot access those private data members using that particular object directly. We have to go through some other public functions or public members of our class. And then we have protected. So protected members are inheritable. So the class that has inherited that particular member can access, or sorry, particular class that has inherited that particular class can access those protected members. They cannot have access the private members. But it works like private as well, like we cannot access them directly using an object. So using an object, protected members are not accessible as well, like private. And public, on the other hand, so public members are accessible from anywhere in the sense they are accessible using an object of that particular class. That means you need a particular representative. You need a particular representative to access that particular member, but they are accessible from anywhere. And default specifier, so default specifier actually stand in between this protected and public. So default are public in general, but public to the file. That means যেই ফাইলের মধ্যে আমি প্রোগ্রামটা লিখছি সেই ফাইলের মধ্যে জাস্ট ডিফল্টটা ডিফল্ট মেম্বার accessible through an object, whereas public is accessible throughout the system. That means throughout this environment these public members are available. So these four categories of access specifier are available for the data members inside a class. So multiple inheritance, they are not possible generally through classes. So for that you have to use interfaces. And one interesting thing is to see here that priority of subclass is always more than the superclass. This is reflected through this function overriding. So what is a function overriding? So this is another concept of polymorphism where we override some function. So some function definition is already written in that particular class, and we are rewriting that particular function is called function overriding. For example, we have two classes here. So one is father class. So this is our base class, and another one is our derived class. So in the base class, we have only one function. So this specifiers, look at this specifiers, they are all default. Okay, so that is a function. Suppose, so it has to be void show, and here it has to be void show as well. So void show, so this function writes flips on the screen, whereas this particular function writes flops on the screen. So what is happening here? So when you extend father, so we know that all the members of father class is available to son now. So son already have a member that is void show, and that has something inside its body. That means there is a available function named void show. Now what we are trying to do here, we are actually overriding that particular function. So when you rewrite the definition of a function that is written in superclass is called method overriding or function overriding. So here we are overriding the function, we are rewriting the definition of that particular function. And when you create a main class, so this is our main class. So when you create your main class and you create an object of a derived class, so that is this son class. So what we have here, so if you call s.show, it will print flop on the screen. So this method, this show methods is overshadowed by our derived class function. So there are several ways to actually call the base variant as well. We are going to look into those things in broad broad classifications and broad discussion of inheritance. So in general, actually the priority is always to the subclass. That means the content of the subclass. If you create an object of subclass, it will always preferable that the contents from the subclass are being accessed from that particular object. But that doesn't mean we cannot access the functions. So what we can do, if we just rename it to show2, for instance, if you just rename it to show2, suppose, so void show2, so in this particular scenario we are not overriding anything. So function overriding is not happening, and now if you call just s.show, it will call flip, or it will print flip. That means it is going to call this particular function. Is it clear that how it is happening? So if you just overwrite some existing members of your existing or base class, the priority goes to the subclass. But if you don't override anything, you can directly access those classes as well. That means s.show is actually accessible and it will print flip in this particular scenario, and in the previous scenario it will print flop. So as you can see, the output for this particular sequence of code will be flop because subclass is prioritized in this scenario. So okay, so there is a method called super method. So it acts like a constructor to the super class. So uh, it is a method that can pass values from a subclass to superclass is called super xy. So this is an example. So super, what it does, it actually passes the values to the constructor of the superclass, or actually the uh, base class. So how you can do this? So suppose you have class A uh, where you have a member, suppose int A, and you have suppose int x, A is equal to x. So this is our class A, and we have suppose class B. So extends A. Uh, Suppose you have written int B here, and now you have defined the constructor of B with two values x and y. So int x and int y, and you want this x to be assigned to A. So there are two ways. What you can do, you can just write A is equal to x because A is already available here. But if you don't want to do that, you can always have the option to write super x and then B is equal to y. So in this way, x, the value of this particular x will be transferred in this particular constructor, and A will be initialized by that particular constructor. There is another keyword called super. So there is another keyword called super. So this is different from super method. So what it does, it actually refers to an object, to the superclass. So suppose you want to access the A from class A. So you can write super dot A is equal to x. So this is another way. So using this particular method super dot A, so super is a keyword that actually denotes the base class. Always it denotes the base class. Like this keywords denotes the current object or current object of that particular class. Like using that particular object, this particular method has been called. So this always points to this current object. So similarly, super always points to the superclass. So you can access the members of the superclass using this super keyword as well. Like if you have similar name, similar data members, like here you have A and here you have A and B both. So you can mention the A from superclass using this super.a, and you can always access A without any specifier. So it is like a scope resolution operator. This super keyword is like a scope resolution operator that we used to do in C++. So there are two things: super method and another one is super keyword. And then we have another keyword called final. So if you define a class as final, that particular class cannot be inheritable. That means this cannot be served as a base class to another class. So that is the final version of that particular class and cannot be extended any further. So that is when we actually define a class as final. So encapsulation, so this is the last concept of object-oriented programming. So any object-oriented programming or any object-oriented paradigm has this basic features. So whenever you are asked what are the basic features of any object-oriented programming, you should always answer uh, classes and object, polymorphism, inheritance, encapsulation, data abstraction, and data hiding. So these are the basic features. So whenever you name the term encapsulation is OOP, you always heard about this abstraction and data hiding. So encapsulation means encapsulating data and the methods that are operating on that particular data all together in a capsule. Like inside a class, we do this kind of activities. And why we have named an object? Because an object is also a representative of a class. So object is the physical entity, class is an abstraction, class is a framework. From that particular framework, the existing uh, representative of that particular class is an object. So that's why a example can be taken as an object. So a object is a collection of data as well as some methods. So this is encapsulation. And what is abstraction? So abstraction means only showcasing the essential details. Like for a car driver, so two persons, suppose a car driver and a car maker or car engineer. So both of them uses that one particular car. But when a car driver is using a car, he doesn't need to understand the complexities, the different parts that are required to assemble that particular car. But whenever that particular engineer is going to build a car, he needs to understand the inside as well as the outside of the car as well. So for that particular uh, driver, we can actually hide all the implementative instructions, all the implementative details, and only showcase whatever that particular person requires. That means where is the steering, where is the seat belt, uh, then how the acceleration works, how the brakes works, how the clutches works. These are the things that are required by that particular driver. So similarly, if we consider someone from you as a student, so the behavior and the properties of you as a student changes, and when you consider yourself as a family member, that properties are changes as well. So abstraction means hiding all the details and only showcasing what are required for that particular scenario. And how this data hiding are done in Java? So obviously using those access specifiers, private, public. So public is actually what makes what doesn't hide anything. So private and protected are the things that actually hides the data from outside world. So access specifiers are used to implement data hiding in Java. So these are the concepts of any object-oriented programming. And this is how they are used in Java. Now let's move into some other topics like Java input output. So we are not going to invest so much time in this particular section. So for inputs, we have several methods. We can use any one of these methods. So I'm going to showcase two or three methods, I guess. You can actually choose any one of them. So I will say that scanner is the best option for inputs in Java, except it is not able to accept characters from users. So there is a method called caret index. So this particular method is from string class. So this method can be used to actually take inputs or take a character as an input to the system. So by default, scanner class doesn't provide any method to take character as an input from the console. So it has all the methods for integer, double, float, string, and all those things. Line, for everything, it has some methods to take inputs from the console, but this doesn't support any method that can directly take character as an input. So to use a scanner class, you need to import this particular statement. That means you must include this scanner object or scanner class actually. So the scanner class is written in a file or that is located in Java util. So that is a path. So java.util.scanner. So scanner is the class name that is available in util package. So you have to include that. So there is a difference between this particular statement and this particular statement. So what is the difference? When you put a star, so that means all the classes that are available in this particular package, in this particular IO package, are available to the program now at this current scenario. And if you just name that particular class, only that particular class is going to be available to this program. So when you put star, means everything, every class in that package is available. Package for now, just assume that package means a folder. So in this particular IO folder, so you can find this folders as well. So they are actually folders. So in your Java installation directory, you can find this folders: Java IO util, Java util. You can find these folders, and there you will find those classes as well. So you can check yourself. So you can find this paths where you can find these files or rather these classes. So whenever you put java.io.start, that means all the classes that are available in this particular IO folder or IO directory is available to the program. You use it or not doesn't matter. And whenever you specify that particular uh, particular class that we require, you can mention that particular uh, class name. So java.util has so many classes, and from those classes we have selected the scanner class. So whenever we are going to use this scanner or scanner class for taking inputs, we must include this java.util. Either star or util.scanner. I am coming to this particular part as well, why we have this IO. So now we have defined a class input, and in a main method, so public static void main uh, string args. Now this is new. Now this is new to you. You know everything before that. হ্যাঁ কোনটা কোনটা হুম 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 না ওটা ইউটিল প্যাকেজের মেম্বার এটা ইউটিলের মেম্বার এই আইওটা নিয়েছি আমরা আইও এক্সেপশনের জন্য So until this public static void main, so this is import statement, this is class definition where inside that particular class we have a main method, the string args, everything is known to you. This is new. So throws IO exception. So this is new. So IO exception means we are going to learn exception as well today only. So IO exception means input output exception. So sometimes it may occur that user have given some invalid inputs uh, for your program. So at that time, an exception will be generated, and that exception is generated using this IO exception. So that's why whenever there is an input related problem, it is said that you must throw an IO exception. And one more important thing is that if you are using a scanner class, this is not mandatory. If you are using any other method for input, so IO exception is mandatory. But for case of scanner, this might not be the mandatory case. So you can actually omit in this particular scenario because you are going to use, or we are going to use, a scanner class. So for now, just assume that whenever you are going to uh, take input or do some input related problems in Java, you must include this throws IO exception to that particular function. যেই ফাংশনের মধ্যে we have those input related situations. So what we have here, so we have two variables, int I and int f, and uh, like C++, you can actually declare variables anywhere in your code. So it is not mandatory to declare all the variables at the top and then starts those executable statements and all like that. So what we have to do, so some lines are important here. So this particular line is important, this particular line is important, and this particular line is important. Rest of the lines are normal executable statements. So what we have to do, first of all, create an object of scanner class. So create an object of scanner class. Now we know that to create an object of scanner class, we have to uh, use the class name, then object name, then new operator, and a constructor of that particular class. So in this scenario, we have this scanner class. So scanner S is capital. So always scanner class S is capital. So generally, whenever we write a class name, we put or we actually starts with a capital letter. So here also for scanner, the scanner class is implemented as like this. So S is capital here. So scanner SC. So you can name the object as anything. So uh, some uh, some users or some programmers write a scanner in. You may write anything. You may write your name as well. We write scanner SC because SC stands for scanner. So scanner SC. So SC is the object of scanner class. Now to create that particular object, we are going to use new operator. So this is our new operator and a constructor, and inside that particular constructor we have an argument called system.in. So this one actually denotes standard input, in our case our keyboards. So standard in means inside the scanner we have to mention which kind of stream or which type of stream we are going to take the input, or the system is going to, or the scanner is going to take the input. So in this case we have mentioned system.in. That means scanner will take the input from system.in. You can actually mention some file as well. So file and standard inputs, both of them treated as same in Java. So you can mention some file as well. So at that particular time, the inputs will be taken from a file. So system.in is actually a system file that denotes the standard input system, like keyboard. So the input will be taken from keyboard. So that's why the argument is system.in. So now we have a message to the user like system.out.print age. So age, this particular message will be printed and user will enter some age, like suppose 100, 200, minus 20, 45. So now to take the input, what we have to use, we have to use the methods that are provided in scanner class, and to use those methods, we require that particular object. So that's why we have created the objects. So number two, use methods from scanner class using the object. So scanner class provides a numerous methods to us, uh, and from those set of methods you can actually use those methods to take inputs. So for, and the convention is very simple. So take a look at this particular scenario. So I will write all the some of the popular functions that are actually required by you to take inputs for this scanner class. So I is equal to sc dot next int. So next int means it will take the next integer as an input and store that particular value into I. So this next int method is used to take integer using scanner method. Similarly, for float, we have next float. For double, we have next double. For string, we have next only, nothing else. For us, so next will take a string up to a space. So if you want the whole line to be inputted as a string, so you have to use next line. So L might be capital or not capital as well. So it should be capital. So yeah, next line. So these are the methods that are very useful while taking inputs using scanner method. So you can find different methods. So what you can do, you can either Google it, that what are the methods available for scanner class. So if you just Google it and go to the documentation of scanner class, the official documentation of scanner class, you can actually find all the methods and their utilities of scanner class. So there are several methods to actually clear the buffers and all those things. So those methods are also available in scanner as well. So you can actually either Google it, or you can use any IDE like Eclipse, NetBeans. So on those IDEs, whenever you actually create an object of SC class and you put SC dot control space, you will get the list of functions that are available to this particular object SC. That means the list of functions that are written and available from scanner class. So you can use in these two ways, you can actually learn all the functions. So it is not possible for someone to learn all the functions, but you can just learn or remember few of them, like because they are actually interrelated or sound similar. So next int for integer, next float for floating point numbers, next double for double numbers, next for string, and next line for a whole line. And we don't have any method to take character as an input. Now what is the problem here in this particular situation, that this age suppose cannot be less than 0. That means it cannot be negative. So we have this if statement to check whether it is a valid age or not. If it is not a valid age, we are not going to take any other input. That means we are not going to take the height as well. And if it is a valid age, we will print it is valid age. Now enter the height, and to take height as an input, so height is a float type of variable, that's why we have used next float. So these two methods, next float, next int, they are actually used to take inputs from user. Now we have printed the height as well. Okay, so this is how we can use scanner class. So create an object of scanner class and use the methods that are provided to that particular object, or the provided by the scanner class, and use those functions or methods using that particular object. So similar functionalities can be given by different classes as well. So we have seen the scanner class. Now we are going to look into, in brief, in short, other classes that are available for input in Java. So I would recommend you use this particular class only, scanner class only. So there is a way to take inputs of characters. I will mention that as well when we come to this particular section, string section. Now this is another class, data input string class. So for this particular situation, we just need to include java.io.star. We don't need any other uh, import statement. That means we don't have to import anything from the util. So util, why scanner is present in util and all the other IO functions are present in data input IO method? Because util is the latest package of Java. That means all the miscellaneous functions that are modified functions or modified classes are actually present in util package. That's why the scanner was present in util. So it has the most recent packages that are introduced to Java. So that's why util is like utility, stands for utility. So that's why scanner class was present in util package, not in IO package. So similarly, we have all these things because it is an input related program. That's why I have exception, and this is mandatory now for data input string. For scanner, that was not mandatory, I guess, but for data input string reader, we need this mandatory. So we have defined, suppose, integer variable, float variable, and boolean variable, and we have to create an object of data input string. So this is the object dis for system.in. So similarly, the same scenario is here as well. So there was a scanner class. Now this is data input stream class. That is the difference. And any other thing or other things are same. So now age, height, and code. So we are going to take these three things as an input. So for that, we have method readInt, readDouble, readBoolean. So the function name is different, but utility is same. Just use that particular object and the function name. Now you can also check all the functions that are available in data input stream through the both the methods that I have said. Either Google the data input stream class or either use any IDE and you can find all the methods available there. So here some alternate methods are given. Alternate method like, so we have this object this, and now there is a method called readLine from this. So what readLine does, it actually reads the whole line. Now if you want to convert a whole line or a line as a string, so the return type from this readLine is a string. So if you want to convert a string into an integer, you have to use this particular method. So integer dot parse int. Here you put the string. So this particular string, if it can be converted into an integer, it will convert it into an integer. Why this? Because string is not a primitive data type. String is a class. And integer, double, float, all those things are primitive data types. So primitive data type cannot be casted. So class object cannot be casted to primitive data type. That's why we have these methods. So they are called wrapper class. This integer is a wrapper class of int class. So similarly, float is a wrapper class for float type of data. So if you want to convert some string to float, you can write float dot parse float, and here you put your string. So that will be converted into a float data. Similarly, double also have its wrapper class. Char also has its wrapper class called character. So they are called the wrapper class. Like uh, the why we have this wrapper class, because so they are called wrapper class. Why we have this wrapper class? Because Java wants to treat everything, every data as an object. So int, float, double, boolean, or bool, char, these are primitive data types. So what they have done, they have wrapped them into their wrapper class so that they can actually use them as an object. So they are similar, they are synonymous. Like a object of double class is similar to the double value or double variable. But what they have done, they have used this kind of wrapping so that they can actually use them as a object as well. There is another method called value of. So that is also can be used to convert some values or some strings into some other values. So all those methods have this kind of method like parseInt, value of. These methods are available in their own wrapper classes. Similarly, system.in can itself be used to take input. So it can take a character as input. So if you write system.in.read, it will and convert that particular value into a character. It will read a particular character from the input. So as you can see, there are so many complex things in while taking inputs, and none of them is actually best for every situation. That's why the scanner is somehow moderate enough to tackle all those scenarios. So that's why we actually prefer to use the scanner class. So there is another very popular uh, class that was used in our times that are known as buffered reader and input stream reader. So combination of buffered reader and input stream reader actually used in our times. At that particular time, scanner was not that popular to take inputs from the user. Now showing output, so I guess I have explained all these things, how we can actually put variables with strings and what are these things, and all the uh, escape characters like /n, /t, /v, /a, all these things are also available in Java as well, like C, C++. /r to carriage return, all those things are available. দাদা 70 নম্বরের কোয়েশ্চেন তো এমসিএ দেখে বলছি, হ্যাঁ 70 মার্কসের কোয়েশ্চেনে 5টা অ্যান্সার করতে হবে। কোয়েশ্চেন নাম্বার 1 ম্যান্ডেটরি, ওকে। এখানে কি থাকবে, এমসিকিউ থাকতে পারে অর শর্ট অ্যান্সার টাইপ। 14 মার্কস এখানে গেল। 7টা করতে হবে, হ্যাঁ 10টা দেওয়া থাকবে মেবি, 7টা করতে হবে। আর কোয়েশ্চেন নাম্বার 2-তে কোয়েশ্চেন নাম্বার 2 টু 1 ম্যান্ডেটরি আর রেস্ট অফ দ্য থেকে 4, মানে 6টা থাকবে। কোয়েশ্চেন নাম্বার 7 অবধি প্রোগ্রাম কোয়েশ্চেন এসব মিলিয়ে 14 করে 6টা কোয়েশ্চেন থাকবে, 4টে করতে হবে, ঠিক আছে। আর এমএসসি দের হচ্ছে 40 মার্কসের এক্সাম, 4টে কোয়েশ্চেনের অ্যান্সার করতে হবে, 10 করে। 1 নম্বর কোয়েশ্চেন ম্যান্ডেটরি। সিমিলারলি এই টাইপেরই কোয়েশ্চেন থাকবে। আর আরো এক্সট্রা দেওয়া থাকবে হচ্ছে 5টা, 3টে করতে হবে। এই প্যাটার্নেই আশা করি কোয়েশ্চেন হবে। হুম? ও আচ্ছা, সরি, এমএসসির এটা নেটওয়ার্কিং এর প্যাটার্ন, এমএসসির তো থিওরি নেই। আর এমসি এর হচ্ছে এটা বিসের কি বলে জাভার থিওরি। এটার তোদের অ্যাসাইনমেন্ট দেবো 5টা, এই 10টা, ওটা জমা দিবি। আর ভাইবা, ল্যাব। 7 থেকে 14 মানে? হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ওই যেদিন যেদিন ল্যাবের এক্সাম থাকবে সেদিনই ভাইবা হবে। আর এমসি এর থিওরিতে ওই রকম থাকবে, এমসি এর থিওরিতে এরকম থাকবে জাভার আর নেটওয়ার্কিং এও। মানে সব, হ্যাঁ, মানে দুজনেরই নেটওয়ার্কিং এ সেম প্যাটার্ন, আর এমসি এর জাভাতেও সেম প্যাটার্ন। বল। দেখ, যতটা পড়াতে পারবো ততটা থেকেই কোয়েশ্চেন থাকবে। মানে এক্সট্রা আলাদা কোয়েশ্চেন দিয়ে যদি না পড়িয়ে কোয়েশ্চেন দেওয়া হয় তাহলে তো সেটা ফেয়ার না, না? ঠিক আছে, মানে মোটামুটি প্রিভিয়াস ইয়ার আর এইসব স্লাইড আর এইসব মিলিয়েই থাকবে, আর এসেনশিয়াল যা পড়িয়েছে ওইসবের মধ্যেই থাকবে। আর এমনিতেও তো তোরা পরীক্ষা তো দিবি দেখে দেখে, চিন্তা আর কিসের। এত সোজাই তো হওয়া উচিত। আমি যেগুলো কোয়েশ্চেন করবো সব পাবি নেটওয়ার্কিং। আমি গুগলে আগে সার্চ করে দেখছি অ্যান্সারটা আছে তো, তারপরেই কোয়েশ্চেনে দিচ্ছি। আরে দেখ, আমি কেন উল্টো করতে যাবো? খেয়ে দিয়ে কাজ নেই? এমনি সেই তো ক্লাস টাস হয়নি ঠিকঠাক। না, একটা জিনিস খালি আমাকে বললো, ইউবি স্যার বললো কোয়েশ্চেনটা একটু লেন্দি দেবে, সবাই তো একই লিখবে, কোয়েশ্চেনটা একটু লেন্দি দেবে যাতে অ্যান্সারটা একটু মানে বেশি করে লিখতে হয়, আর কিছু না। আমি এমনি ইজি ইজি কোয়েশ্চেন দিচ্ছি। নেটওয়ার্কিং এর আমি যেইটুকুটা পড়িয়েছি, না আমি যেইটুকুটা জাস্ট ট্রান্সপোর্ট লেয়ার অব্দি পড়িয়েছি, সেখান থেকে মোটামুটি, হ্যাঁ ট্রান্সপোর্ট ট্রান্সপোর্ট লেয়ার, ট্রান্সপোর্ট লেয়ারের আগে অব্দি ওখান থেকে যেইটুকুটা পড়িয়েছি ওখান থেকে আশা করি শর্ট কোশ্চেন পেয়ে যাবি। শর্ট কোয়েশ্চেনের একটা কোয়েশ্চেন আর দুটো বড় কোয়েশ্চেন তো পেয়ে যাবি দুজনেই, মানে এমসিও পাবি এমএসসিও পাবি। আর ইউবি স্যার যেটুকুটা পড়াচ্ছে বা সিকিউরিটি আর বাকি যেটুকুটা থাকছে সেইটুকুটার আমি আইদার নোটস দিয়ে দেবো, না হলে স্লাইডগুলো তো সবই দিয়ে দেবো, যা আছে সব স্লাইড দিয়ে দেবো। কিন্তু যেইটুকুটা পড়ানো হচ্ছে তার মধ্যে থেকেই দু একটা কোয়েশ্চেন থাকবে, চাপ নেই। জাভা তো যা পড়া হবে যতদূর হবে ততদূরই থাকবে, চাপ নেই। যতদূর পড়ানো হবে ততদূরই থাকবে। কি? ফারাউজের নেই? ফারাউজানের ইবুক লাগবে? আমার কাছে যে ইবুকটা আছে আমি অ্যাকচুয়ালি পড়িয়েছি ওটা থেকে, ওই এ টপ ডাউন অ্যাপ্রোচ, রুসো অ্যান্ড ক্রুজ। ফারাউজানও আছে, সে ডাউনলোড করে দেওয়া যাবে, কোনো ব্যাপার না। তোদের লাগলে আমি দিয়ে দেবো। বুঝেছি, আমি যেটা থেকে ট্রান্সপোর্ট লেয়ার আগে অব্দি পড়িয়েছি সেটাও আমি দিয়ে দিচ্ছি, ফারাউজানও দিয়ে দেবো, আমার কাছে কোনো প্রবলেম নেই। আছে, দুটোই আছে। ঠিক আছে। So Java has these operators as well. So you know what is the meaning of these operators. I don't think I need to explain anything. And you also know that modulo operation does not work on float. So these are the relational operators: less than, equal, greater than, equal, equal, and all this. And these three logical operators and that are available in Java, and or not. So this is assignment operator used to assign some values from R value to L value, and L value should be a memory location. So these are arithmetic operators. হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ, এখন এই যে এত দূর এক্সেপশন হ্যান্ডলিং অব্দি চলবে, এখন অপারেটরস এ চলছে। এগুলো জানা আছে, এগুলো আমার এক্সপ্লেন করার কিছু নেই, আমি জাস্ট দেখিয়ে দিচ্ছি যে এগুলো আছে যাতে কোয়েশ্চেন করা যায়, আর কিছুই না। টার্নারি অপারেটরটা কি বলতে হবে? Ternary operator, also known as conditional operator. So right. So it has only one variant in Java. So in C, you can find this kind of variations as well. Like you don't have to put any assignment operator, but in Java you have to actually give the assignment operator. So এইরকম টাইপের কোয়েশ্চেন আসতে পারে, লাইক একটা টার্নারি অপারেটর দেওয়া থাকলো, আহ, দিয়ে বলা হলো এটাকে ইফ এলসে কনভার্ট করো, বা ইফ এলসে দেওয়া আছে টার্নারি অপারেটরে কনভার্ট করো। এগুলো কিন্তু নেটে খুঁজেও পাওয়া যাবে না, এগুলো জাস্ট ট্রিকি কোয়েশ্চেন, আর কিছুই না। এই টাইপের কোয়েশ্চেন শর্ট কোয়েশ্চেন আসতে পারে। So these are the bitwise operators that are available. We don't have any use for them, আমরা generally use করি না। So this is a special operator, dot operator, or also called member access operator, used to access some member of a class using uh, the object of that particular class. So S is an object of class summation, and the method add from this class summation is accessed using this dot operator. Now we know that the control structure is sequential, or divided into three parts: sequential, branch, and iterative. So sequential means the instructions that are executing one after another, and branch means we have more than two paths, and we have to choose one of them. And in iterative, same sequence of code is being executed repeatedly. So all those statements that we have seen so far are all sequential statement, and now we start with branch instructions or branching. So here we have our tool ifelse. So you know what ifelse does. It actually two-way branching scheme, where if we put a condition a binary condition here, and depending on that particular value, so uh, something different from C and C++ again, this condition is a binary condition. That means it should be a boolean value. It should be a boolean value. It should be yes, no, true, false. It should be true and false only. We cannot put 1, 0 and all these things. Maybe supported, but actually these conditions are boolean values. টেস্ট করিনি অনেক দিন হয়ে গেল তাই, বাট যতদূর আমার মনে পড়ছে these are only accepting only true and false. Okay. So if condition statement 1 2, that means if this boolean condition is true, so these statements will be executing. If this particular condition is false, this particular statements is going to execute. This else part is not mandatory. If you just remove this else, that is also fine. This is not a mandatory part. Yeah, so I was correct. This condition should be a boolean. Okay, 1 second. Oh, so one thing is missing here. We have multi-way branching scheme. That is the use of switch case. So that is also available in Java, and also if-else-if ladder. So this is also available in Java. So we have these tools as well that are available, that were available in C and C++ are also available in Java. Do I need to explain them? Switch case and if-else-if? Okay. So for iterative statements, we have two situations. One is entry control, another one is exit control. And in entry control, we have two tools. One is for, another one is while. And for exit control, we have only do while. So what are the basic parts of any loop or any iterative statements are these four parts: initialization, number two is condition, number three is body, or number four, or rather you can say the set of statements that are going to be repeated, and number three is step value. These four things are always there in any loop. What is different? The positioning of these four things are different. So I'm just going to explain everything. So for loop, the initialization statement is here, condition statement is there, increment decrement actually represent the step value. That means how close or how much steps we are taking towards the end condition. So this condition is actually end condition. When this condition is true, the repetition will done. When this particular condition is false, we are going out of this loop. So some value is going to initialized here, and we have to reach to our end condition. That means we are starting from this particular point and we are going to reach this particular point. So this is our end condition. And what is step? Step is how much steps we are taking in each turn. So this is our step value. So from here to here. So this is our step. So either we can be, it can be decrement, increment, or it can be anything. So not always that we actually decrement or increment here. We can have different type of step values. That means we can change the value of that uh, in that iterator by different means. And this is the body, or this is the set of statements that are going to be repeat itself. So you know what is the working scenario of loop, so I am not going to go into details. So alternatively, if we have a single statement, we can just remove this particular things. We know that. Similarly, in case of while, so as I said, for any loop, uh, we have these four situations. But in case of while, you might have seen that there is only two things: condition and body. No initialization, no step value. Can anyone tell me, is it correct or wrong? Is it that in case of while we have only condition and statements? Condition and statements only, or we actually require this initialization and step value? Is it sufficient? We actually need initialization and step value. For example, you have actually done this particular program where you can count the number of digits from a number. So what you write, while a suppose greater than 0. So what is this a? This is a condition. I agree to that. But what is this a? Where this particular value came from? It came from either input. So a equal to sc dot next int. So this is the initialization. So actually initialization is here. So as this is not the part of this while, we actually overlook it. We actually don't mention. So initialization is actually there at the beginning of the while. So that is a greater than 0. And now what you write, suppose c plus plus. And then again you are changing the value of a. A is equal to a divided by 10. What is this? You are trying to reach to 0 from a number a equal to 235. From this particular number you are trying to reach 0 by how many steps? By dividing the number by that, but by dividing the number with 10 every time in every step. So that is actually our change. So this is our step value. So this is a part of the body itself. That's why we actually don't mention it individually. But these two things actually present in while loop as well as in do while loop as well. Not always, but they are present actually. So in any iteration, we actually need this four statement: initialization, condition, body, and step value. And for do while, so this is a exit control loop where condition is checked at the end, and if the condition is false, then we move out of the loop, and if the condition is true, we keep on continuing to the loop. Similarly, here at the beginning we have initialization statement, and inside the body we have some step value. That means we are actually changing some of the values. So it is different for infinite loop. If you are running infinite loop, that is different. So these are the general scenarios. There are some exceptions. So we can actually define infinite loop using for loops as well. So that is different thing. So for this it is an infinite loop, and this time the scenario is different. Can anyone tell me what will be the output of this? লিখলে হবে না, দেখতে পাবো না। কেউ পারবে না। int a equal to 1 comma 2 comma 3 system dot out dot println a. 5। আরে ডু while নেই। আরে এটা ডু while না, এটা ডু while না, আমি জাস্ট এইটুকুটার কথা বলছি। হুম। কেন? কমা তো অপারেটর একটা। কমা itself is a operator. I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about this. একজন কিন্তু এক বলেছে অ্যান্সার, রিজনটা ভুলভাল দিয়েছে, কিন্তু একই হবে অ্যাকচুয়ালি অ্যান্সার। Because comma is the operator, but equal to has a higher preference than comma. So that's why this statement will look like this. Int a is equal to 1, comma 2, 3. So that's why the value of a will be 1. But if we have a statement like this, say int a is equal to 1, comma 2, comma 3. So comma produces the result, and the result from the comma operator is always the end statement. Okay, so if you apply 1, comma 2, comma 3, the result will be 3 from this comma operators. So in this particular situation, the output will be 3 because we have surpasses the priority of this with this braces. So the braces has higher priority. That's why 1, comma 2, comma 3 will result in 3, and that 3 will be assigned to A. It's just trick. Yes. আর এই ব্র্যাকেটটা যদি থাকে তাহলে এটার প্রায়োরিটি বেশি, এটার প্রায়োরিটি বেশি মিন্স কমা অপারেটর গুলো আগে এক্সিকিউট করবে, কমা অপারেটর এক্সিকিউট করলে অলওয়েজ দ্য রেজাল্ট ইজ দ্য লাস্ট স্টেটমেন্ট। Here the last statement is 3, so the value or the answer from 1, comma 2, comma 3 is 3. That's why 3 will be assigned to A. এগুলো মাঝে মাঝে বল। তাহলে সি তে হবে এটা। জাভা ইজ স্ট্রিক্টলি টাইপ, তাই জন্য হচ্ছে না। এটা লজিক্যালি সি তে কারেক্ট, ঠিক আছে? তাহলে আমি ওটাই ভাবছিলাম যে নাও হতে পারে। লজিক্যালি যদি দেখি তাহলে ওটা হওয়া উচিত, সি সি প্লাস প্লাসে ওই জিনিসটা হবে, কিন্তু জাভা যেহেতু স্ট্রংলি টাইট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ, আমরা সেটা আগেও দেখেছি। আচ্ছা এইটাও কি হচ্ছিল না, int a is equal to 1, comma 2, comma 3? আচ্ছা, এটা আমি আজকে সকালবেলা দেখছিলাম কোথাও একটা, তাই মনে হলো যে বলে দেওয়া, তাহলে হবে না। নাও ক্রিয়েটিং, আচ্ছা ফর ইচ এর জন্য আমাকে কালেকশনে তো আসতে হবে, আসি আগে অ্যারে, অ্যারেতে যাই তারপরে বলছি, ঠিক আছে? So one dimensional array, so you know what is an array. We are just not going to invest our time on understanding how array works. So we are just going to define and declare an array. To declare an array, you must use the data type with the array name and with this braces, the third bracket. So you have already used that signature. So this is how you have defined a string array, and now in this particular situation we have defined an integer array. So this is only declaration, that means no memory has been allocated. We have just created a reference to an array, that means semester can be an array. So create or allocate the memory, what we have to do, we have to use a new operator. So always to create an array we are going to use a new operator, and with that we are going to pass how many number of values or how many number of elements of that particular type we want. So in this particular situation we have created a an array called semester with 6 as number of elements. That means 6 number of elements are going to be there. So this is semester, and we have index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And one more important thing, unlike C and C++, Java is extremely restricted regarding the index of uh, any array. So the index will always starts from 0 and ends at the length minus 1. And how can we find the length of a string? So it is very simple. Just use this statement, semester dot length. Mind that, don't include this, only semester dot length. So that will give you the length of a particular array or this particular semester array. Okay, and it is restricted, that means you can only access semester suppose 0 through 5. If you are going to use semester say minus 1, it is completely wrong in Java. You can also cannot use semester 6. This is also wrong. That means you can't go beyond the index of your allocated memory, because memory allocation is managed by the Java compiler itself. You have already learned these things. So these restrictions are there, and if you try to access something or some elements that is out of this index, exception is generated called array index out of bound exception. So this particular exception will generate whenever you are going to try to access some index that is out of that index range. So the index range is always 0 to length minus 1. So this two statement can be merged up into a single combined statement like int semester is equal to new int 6. So this is how you can create a single dimensional array. And these things can be interchanged. So as we have already said that string braces then args and string args braces, both of them are same. So how we can initialize an array? So this is similar to C++, like declare with some values. So that is actually initializing. The length of an array can be returned with this semester.length. So as I have said, I mentioned earlier. And if you ask how we can actually access all the elements, so those things are similar to C and C++, like you can use the for loops, you can use this type of indexing, semester, so for I is equal to 1, not 1, I equal to 0, I less than semester dot length I plus plus, semester I is equal to suppose I. If you want, you can have statements like this as well. So this is how we can use array. So all the methods or all the manipulating things that you can do in C, C++, all of them is similar in Java as well. So here we have created a two-dimensional array. So this is pretty easy than C++. So what we do, we write float result, then now two braces. So opening brace, third brace, and closing brace, and then opening brace, closing brace, and with that we have to mention the number of rows and number of columns. Okay, so this is how we can actually create a two-dimensional array. And you can use this array as it is, like you used to do with the help of two for loops, one for rows, another one for column, and you can use it uh, for row wise access, column wise access. It depends on how you write your code. So if you want a two-dimensional array of variable size, you can do that as well. If you want a variable size of two-dimensional array, that means you don't want 5 plus 5. You want first row, say row 1 to have 2 elements, row 2 to have 4 elements, row 3 to have 5 elements, row 0 to have 4 elements, and row 4 to have say 6 elements. So if you want this kind of uh, uh, two-dimensional arrays, you can create that as well. So what you have to do, first of all, you have to define the number of rows. So here we have defined the number of rows. So char result new is equal to char 5. So that means we want 5 number of rows, and for each row we have defined the number of columns. So in the first row we have 10 columns, in the second row you have 20 columns, in the third row you have 30 columns, in the fourth row you have 40 columns, in the fifth row we have 50 columns. Okay, so this is a variable size multi-dimensional array. So each row has different number of columns depending on the information maybe. So this is a new thing. That means you can create a multi-dimensional array that has different number of entries or different number of columns in each row. So this multi-dimensional array might look like this. Like, sorry. So this row has one element, this row has some more, this row has some more, this row has some more, and this row has some more. So this might look like this. Okay. So we have another kind of array known as for each. So you have learned for, while, do while. There is another kind of loop that is dedicated to list. Okay, so array is a list itself, so that's why I am showing this particular example with an array. So what this does, uh, one second. So the syntax is something like this: for say int I কোলন সেমিস্টার। এক সেকেন্ড। হ্যালো, আমি ঘুমাচ্ছি। তোর মাথা আমি দেখ, এই যে দেখ, আমি ক্লাস নিচ্ছি সেই 3টে থেকে। এখন তো ম্যারাথন ক্লাস চলছে। আমাকে থোড়াই দেখতে পাচ্ছে। না, এখন একটু পরে। আচ্ছা, তোর মাথা দেখতে পাচ্ছি খালি আমি। তুই কি দেখাচ্ছিস আমাকে? ও, আমি পেছন দেখাচ্ছি তাই ওও পেছন দেখাচ্ছে। দাঁড়া, তাহলে আমি ক্লাসটা একটু কমপ্লিট করে নি। বুঝলি? কেন? তুই দেখ কি করবে। কেন? কি করেছি? এখানে কি হয়ে গেছে? চলছে। দরজা? দরজা কি? ওই দরজা মানে খেলা। দাঁড়া, আমি ক্লাসটা নিয়ে নিচ্ছি আগে। বুঝলি? ঠিক আছে, তুই একটু রাখ, আমি ক্লাসটা নিয়ে নিচ্ছি। কি করেছিস হাতে? আজকে মাথা কম ব্যথা কমেছে? সে থাক, কিছু হবে না। তোর নখ থেকে তো উঠে গেছে ওগুলো। উম, শোনা যাচ্ছে তো? So it is look like this for int variable. So this is called iterator. For an iterator, what you have to mention? You have to mention a collection. So here you have a collection, or rather you can call it a list. So array is considered to be a list. Uh, Similarly, there is array list, a vector, hash map, so many classes that can be considered as a list. So array is considered as a list, so that's why I am showing this particular example as an array. So what I am trying to do here, I am trying to print all the elements of this particular array. So it look like this. So int, that means the data type, that means each element of this particular list of what type, so that you have to mention. So for that particular data type, then that one variable that is used to iterate uh, from all the elements starting to end for this particular list, and do whatever operations you want with that particular operation. So this particular statement is similar to kind of like this: for int I is equal to 0, I less than semester dot length I plus plus system dot out dot print a of I. Suppose not a of I, sorry. So we have a name for our array. So that is semester I. So these two statements are equivalent, where here I is a iterator, but it is an index. I is a iterator for this particular loop, but it is an index. That's why we have to use semester index. But in this particular situation, I is a iterator, but also it represents one single item from the list. So that's why we are not using any index operation to get that particular value. So what we have, this I is itself is the item. So have you got the difference from for each and for? So this is kind of like you have learned in Python. No, ওখানে range, yeah. So this is dedicated for lists only. Okay, so you cannot use it like those. So this kind of for loop is called for each loop. বোঝা গেছে for each? So this is new, that was not available in C, C++. Now working with string objects. So you have already known that string is the class name. Using that, you have to create an object. So what you can do, just string object name is equal to new string, that is the constructor, and put whatever you want within double quote. So this is how you can actually declare and initialize a string object, and this statement can be written like this. Also, this is also valid, because string class is somehow closely related to the system, so this kind of operations is also applicable in case of strings. And now creating a string array. So string name string equal to new string 10. That means string of 10, sorry, a array of 10 strings. That means you can store 10 string variables here. And we also know that concatenation plus operator is overloaded to concatenate two strings, like life plus of plus pi will result life of pi. Now there are so many things to learn from this string class. There are so many methods that you can learn from this string class. So I want a blank page. So this one. So first method is uh, name dot length. So mind this. Now for this particular scenario, we have placed this braces. For an array, we have suppose integer array 10. We have written this to find the length of this particular array. But for to find the length of a particular string, we must use name dot length this. So this finds the length of string, lengths of strings. And this time this is a data member, not this is not a data member, this is a member function of string object or a string class. That's why we have to put this braces here. So name dot length will return the length of the string. Now the next method, say name dot char at suppose 0. So what it does, it actually returns the character at index 0. So what is the character at index 0? That is y for this particular situation. So that's why it will return y. So what is the syntax of this caret? The syntax of caret is string object dot caret index, and this index must be a valid index. It will return a character at index character at that particular index. So it will return the character at that particular index. So using this char at 0, we can actually take inputs from scanner class. What was the scanner class? Uh, so the scanner class was like sc.next. So it used to take string as an input. So it used to take string as input, but there was no method to take the first or to take a character as an input. So what we can do, so sc.next is actually returns a string. We can actually add dot char at 0 to actually get a character from the user. So sc.next.char at 0 is actually going to take a character from the string. Even if suppose the user has entered uh, hello, suppose user has entered hello, even if user has entered hello, if you use this particular statement, h will be the input, so a will become h. বোঝা গেছে? So char at is returning the character at that particular index. So 0 is the starting index, so that's why it is returning the starting character that has been entered. So if someone has entered say I and then enter, so it will a will be I. Okay, so that is why this particular extension needs to be used in case of scanner uh, class if you are trying to get a character input using a scanner class. So this is one of the extension. So caret method is very useful in that particular scenario, and there are so many ways you can utilize these two functions. So there are programs like abbreviation programs. For those kind of abbreviation program, you can use this two method name and caret to create the abbreviation like from Netaji, not Subhash Chandra Bose. From here, you can have abbreviations like SCB, S dot C dot B, SC Bose, S dot C dot Bose, Bose dot SC, Bose dot Subhash Chandra. So many abbreviations and so many kind of string manipulations can be done only learning these two functions. Also, there are so many other functions like, so do I have to do one of these programs? Do I have to do this one of these abbreviated programs? Because they are basically logic based programs. And one of these string programs can become in program as well, a exam as well. There might be a string based program in your exam. The next function that is strobj, that is string object dot trim. So what it does, it actually removes the leading and the trailing spaces. Like if someone has entered something like this, suppose backspace, not backspace, this is a blank space, blank space, blank space, blank space. Hello, suppose blank space, blank space, blank space, world, blank space, blank space, blank space. Suppose A is equal to something like this that has been entered by some user. Now what we want to remove the leading, that is the starting spaces and end spaces. So for that, what we can do, A trim. So if you use A dot trim, what will be the value of A now? It will become hello, blank space, blank space, blank space, world. So trim method is there to remove the leading and the trailing spaces. So there might be a program where uh, you might have to remove multiple spaces and remove those spaces with a single space from a string. Like in this particular scenario, we have three different spaces between hello and world, and you have to remove the extra spaces. You have to make it only one space between each words. So this might be another program, and you cannot use trim method at that particular time, obviously. And trim will actually not help in case of if the spaces are in between some words. So trim can only trim the leading and the trailing and the leading spaces. It has some variations like ALN something like this. It might have some variations as well. You can check it out. So there are another method called to uppercase. So str dot to lowercase. So this methods will convert all the strings to uppercase, and to lowercase method will convert all the string to lowercase letters. That means everything will be lowercase. So this might be important in case of string matching. If you are trying to match two strings, whether two words are same or not, in this case, if you want to ignore the cases, you can use to uppercase to lowercase. So convert everything to either uppercase or lowercase, or in any other scenarios you might have to use this kind of activities. So related to this uppercase and lowercase, there is a method that is provided by the character class. So character wrapper class. So character dot to lower. Here you have to put the character. It will convert this particular character to lowercase, and character dot to upper. If you put a character, so it will convert that particular character into uppercase. So there are these methods as well uh, that are provided from this character class. Also there are methods like isDigit, isAlphabet, that are provided by character classes. You can explore the character class to find out the other methods. Just in your IDE, if you are using any IDE, just type character capital C dot control space, or you can just Google it that all the methods of the character class. They are useful, but you have alternatives as well. You can always find the ASCII to check whether some character is uppercase or lowercase or not. If you know a character is in uppercase, you can just add 35, I guess, or 32. Add 32 to make it lowercase. So you have manual options as well, but Java provides some automatic options as well. Now, suppose there is two strings. Suppose s1 is equal to hello and s2 is equal to hello. Now, if I write s1 is equal to s2, say somehow it is printing same, else what will be the output? If we have s1 string s1 is equal to hello, string s2 is equal to hello, and if we just check it like this, if s1 is equal to s2, what will be the output? Why?
ইন্টিজারে শুধুমাত্র হয়, ফ্লোটের ক্ষেত্রে হবে না, বুলিয়ানের ক্ষেত্রে হবে না, ক্যারের ক্ষেত্রে হবে না।
Dot equal to equals. Why? Because the reason is simple. Equal to works on primitive data type, and string object is not a primitive, it is an object. So on objects, equal operation doesn't work. Equal on objects, equal operation try to find out the references. Are they belong to the same reference? In this particular scenario, S1 and S2 are two different references. So that's why in this particular scenario, they are not actually checking the values of this. They are actually checking whether these references are same or not. They are actually not same, so that's why it will print not same. To check whether two strings are equal or not, what we have here, we have s1 dot equals s2. Using this particular method, we can check whether two strings are equal or not. Okay.
And we have a variant of equals, that is equals ignore case S2.
So this is a variant of equals where the cases will be ignored. Like if we have suppose a small h, so dot equals, in this particular scenario dot equals will return false and equals ignore case will return. Okay, so there are other methods like substring method.
Is dot substring. Now
In substring, uh, this is and this is both are small. So s dot substring start and with. Start and with. So you mention the starting index and the with or number of characters you want. Uh, so using that, you can create a substring from a string. So I highly recommend you go to your Google or go to your IDE and explore all the methods of string class. So this is another class, vector class. So it is used as an alternative to an array, or it can be used to an alternative to an array. So it is a growable array. So vector class implements a growable array. Growable means the size can be changed dynamically. However, its size can grow shrink as needed to accommodate adding and removing items from the vector. So array is a fixed size list, whereas vector is a variable size list. That means you can actually change the array. So how we can define or create a vector? So for creating a vector, vector object is equal to new vector. So we are creating a vector without size, and you can also mention the size as well. So vector2 is equal to new vector. And how can we use it? So this particular functionalities can also be found in array. So I will recommend you to utilize this vector by yourself, and you must import util.start. So this vector, so this is also a new generation class. So that is why it is also situated in util. So you can explore that objects, you can resize them. So obj one dot uh, there might be option of shrink and grow. So there might be option of shrink or grow or resize or something like this. There might be a function. So I actually don't know what is the exact function, but you might find that function while you explore your vector class. So the Java is very interesting. You just have to know which class have to be used when, and you can get all the properties of that particular class from exploring that particular class. So these classes offer so many features. It is hard to remember all of these features, so it is better, so whenever you use that particular class, just go through the documentation of that particular class. So some of the differences of vector and array list. So vectors are synchronized, whereas array list is unsynchronized. Any method that touches the vectors contains its thread safe. Thread safe in the sense it will not hampered by the thread. So a vector is not hampered by the thread, whereas array list is hampered by the thread. Data growth can be handled efficiently with vectors, whereas data growth in array list is not efficient. So array list was predefined, and vectors is a new generation uh, replacement for array list. So that's why vector is mentioned in this particular slide. You can explore it by your own. Now, let's move into the exception handling. So, what is an exception? So, it is a unexpected termination of your program. Unexpected termination of your program. So, how many types of errors are there? Can anybody tell me how many types of errors can be generated? Yeah. So, there are three types of errors. One is syntactical error, another one is logical error, and another one is runtime error. Okay. Now, tell me which kind of error is identified by the compiler. Which type of error is identified by the compiler at the time of compilation, obviously. Runtimes error are identified by the compiler at the time of compilation. How? Example? আবার কে টাইপ করছিস, টাইপ করিস না, একটু মুখে বল। মানে 5 / 0 এটা লজিক্যাল এরর নাকি এটা সিনট্যাকটিক্যাল এরর নাকি রান টাইম এরর? এটা কম্পাইলার ডিটেক্ট করতে পারে? তো সেটা কি কম্পাইল ডিটেক্ট করতে পারলো কম্পাইলার? কোথায়? কম্পাইলেশন টাইম এরর কোনগুলো? মানে কাকে বলে কম্পাইলেশন টাইম এরর, কাকে বলে রান টাইম এরর, কাকে বলে? রান টাইম এরর কখন জেনারেট করবে? that means যেটা out of the scope or out of the logic of compiler. মানে compiler cannot identify that kind of error, that are runtime error. Runtimes error are only those errors that cannot be identified by the compiler. Then only they are runtime error. কম্পাইলার কে স্কিপ করে গেছে, কম্পাইল টাইমে যে এরর গুলো আইডেন্টিফাই করতে পারছি, মানে কম্পাইলার তো কম্পাইল করার টাইমে কিছু এরর দেখায় আমাদেরকে, those errors are compile time error. So generally errors are of two types depending on the situation. One is compile time error, another one is runtime error. মানে যদি আমি বলি সেইভাবে, but actually these three are the categories of error: syntactical, logical, and runtime. Whereas runtime error is same as the runtime error. That means the errors that are generated at the runtime. This 5 divided by 0 can be identified by the compiler. Compiler will identify this kind of error. But if we have int a is equal to 0 and suppose b is equal to 5 divided by a, the value of a will be resolved at the time of running. So at this particular situation, though it seems like it is a divisible by 0 error, but it cannot be identified by the compiler. But if you just write directly 5 divided by 0 or a divided by 0, it will be identified by the compiler, because compiler knows what is the meaning of 0, what is the meaning of the constant 0. So it will be identified by the compiler. So that is the compilation time error. Whereas in this particular scenario, this will generate a runtime error. Now the question is from the syntax logical. So runtime is out of the question. Now the question is from the syntax and logical, which kind of error is actually identified by the compiler? Anyone else? আর কেউ কি নেই, ক্লাস করছে না কেউ? তো অ্যান্সার দে যে হোয়াট কাইন্ড অফ এরর ইজ আইডেন্টিফাইড বাই দ্য কম্পাইলার, syntactical or logical? Runtime to out of the question. Yeah. So the syntactical errors are only identified by the compiler. Logical error can only be identified by test cases. Test cases, that means by testing your code, and runtime errors that are out of reach of uh, any compilation. So what we are trying to do here, we are trying to handle the exception. Exception means the runtime error or unexpected closure or unexpected termination of the program. So we are trying to handle that. So exception handling is a method to actually avoid runtime errors or avoid unexpected termination of programs. Okay. So there are some keywords that are required to handle exception. So the main and the two main uh, the two main keywords that are used to handle exceptions are try and catch. So here you can see an example of try block. So what is this try block does? So inside this try block you have to put your code, suspicious code. What does the suspicious code means? Like that particular code, like int a is equal to suppose sc dot int, next int, and say int b is equal to a, sorry, 5 divided by a. So at present you don't know what will be the value of a. A might be a 0, A might be a 0. So this particular code, not this one, not this one, not even this one. So this particular code actually looks like suspicious. That means depending on the value of A, this might abruptly terminate your program. So what we can do, we can put our suspicious code inside a try block, and we have to mention in the catch block, we have to mention all the possible errors that can be identified by that particular suspicious code, and we can handle those there. So how it is looks like. So a try block is always followed by a exception block. A try block is always followed by a catch block where you have to mention your exception. So you have to mention the exception type, and you have to create an object of that particular value. So here, suppose exception type 1, and we have written exception 3. So if any of this particular statement generates an exception of this type 1, this particular statement is going to execute. So it is something like a switch case where uh, depending on some scenarios you are going to do something. And here also we have a default case. We are going to a real example as well. For just now, just look at these examples. So you can have another catch block. So you can have multiple catch blocks, and each catch block will have one type of error. And what are those errors? We are going to talk about that as well. So one type of errors will be there in each scenario. So uh, one of the errors can be arithmetic exception. That means some arithmetic error has generated. So divided by 0 is an arithmetic exception. So if you have something like this int b is equal to 5 divided by a, if this code is inside this try block, you must include arithmetic exception. You must create an object of arithmetic exception class. You can also mention other exceptions like you have heard previously, like IO exception. IO exception, suppose E. So you can do all the operations that are required to be done to solve this kind of exception generated here in this particular section or in this particular catch block. So try includes your suspicious code, and catches are used to actually handle those exceptions. Now another interesting thing is that if an exception is generated in statement 1, if a statement exception is generated in statement 1, that means int b is equal to 5 divided by a is the statement at statement 1. And we have some other statements followed by those statements or that particular statement. So if the value of a is turned out to be 0 at the time of running, rest of the statements, like from statement 2 to all the statements in this try block, are going to be skipped. They are not going to be executed. Rather, the control will come to one of the catch block depending on what is the type of that particular exception. If no type of exception is found, if no type of exception is found, then the control will terminate your program. So three situations can happen depending on the exception. Excellent. So three things can be happen depending on the type of exception that is generated from here. So either it will be catched by one of the exception blocks, or the program will terminate itself. So it is better to analyze your code and identify what type of exceptions might generate from your particular suspicious code. So that I said that a try block must be catched by either one of the catch statement or a finally block. So I will come to this final block later. So a finally block can be matched with a try block to handle exception. Once entered, the final block will always execute no matter if you return from it or a exception is thrown within the try block. So what is happening here? We will come to this example. So finally block will be executing every time. So every time finally block will execute, whether some exception has generated in try block or some exception has not generated within the try block. So if we have some finalized work, like suppose we have opened a file inside the try block and we are doing some operations like IO operation and writing operation and all these things within that particular file. So all those codes are kept in the try block. Now, uh, suppose in the cache block, you have like file not found exception. Like this exception will generate if file is not found. So you can just resolve that particular file not found error in that particular situation and restart from the beginning, suppose. Or we have input output exceptions like we have some problem in file input output operations, and then in the finally block we have closed that particular file. So suppose if dot close, so that means we are closing that particular file in the finally block. So suppose in this particular situation where if an error is occurred in the try block or if an exception is occurred in the try block, even though you should always close the file, that means f dot close will going to execute. If nothing has occurred in the try block, so no catch block is there to actually catch your exception. So even though that, if that is the case, like nothing, no exception is there, then only, then also that file is going to be closed in the finally block. So that's why finally block is there. So finally block is going to be executed whether there is an exception in the try block or there is no exception in the try block. And finally block will only be skipped if you somehow have used an exit method. That means you are forcefully exiting from the program before it reaches to the finally block. If you do that, finally block is not going to execute at that certain situation only. In any other situation, finally block is going to be executed. So here is an example. So I said in the input output section that whenever you use data input stream, you must throw an input output exception, right? You must throw an input output exception. But what we have done here, we have not thrown it. So actually that was not the case. So at that time, as you didn't know how to handle the exception, we have said that particular statement that you must throw an exception. But that is not the case. Either you have to handle the exception by yourself or you have to throw the exception. So what we have done here, we have actually handled our exception. So we have all those code that is important. That means that is important or related to the input. That is this particular code integer dot parseInt in dot read line. So this was the statement or this was the statement that might generate an input output error. For that, we have kept that particular statement, that is try I is equal to integer dot parseInt int read line. So we have kept that particular statement into our try block. That is, this particular code is suspicious. Now we have catched the exception using catch exception. So this is the father class or mother class, whatever you can say. So exception is the base class of all the other exceptions. So all the other exception has inherited this exception class. So that's why this can be treated as a default exception handling. So if you don't know, or if you exactly have no idea which kind of exception might generate in your particular code, you can always use this exception. You don't have to mention the exact exception. You can obviously use the base class of exception. So exception is the base class of any exception. So we have used our base class or base exception here. So exception E, and we have printed that machine. So we have actually not handled anything here. We have just printed what we wanted to, just as a message. So we have printed the content of E. That means we have printed whatever the message of that error will be. So here in this catch block, you can actually handle the error. So now let's look at all types of errors. So you can actually put a finally block here. You can actually put a finally block here and write something. So whether this particular statement is true or not, that means whether this particular statement has executed or not, doesn't matter. This final block is going to execute. Hmm. এখানে ওই মেসেজটাই আসবে। এখানে অ্যাকচুয়ালি এটা হচ্ছে বেস ক্লাস, এক্সেপশন ইজ দ্য বেস ক্লাস অফ অল দ্য এক্সেপশন। ওকে, so if you use exception class and print the error message e, so it will print the original error message, like কোন ক্লাসের জন্য এক্সেপশন এসেছে সেই মেসেজটাই এখানে অ্যাকচুয়ালি প্রিন্ট হবে, মানে যেটা অরিজিনাল এরর মেসেজ সেটাই। আমি যদি চাই, if you want, you can actually customize this and write your own message here. You can write your own message here, or you can handle your code in any other way. So what we have done, just we have just printed whatever the system message was. So E is the system message. So it will print the actual error name or error class name. What is the error has been generated. Okay. So let's look at all the exception types. So first of all, IO exception. So it might generate in failure of taking inputs or showing output. So it is an input-output related exception. Then we have arithmetic exception. So something like that divided by zero. It can be categorized as arithmetic exception. Then array index out of bound exception. Like I said, the array index is strictly restricted between 0 to length minus 1. If you go beyond that, it will generate an array index out of bound exception. String index out of bound exception. So string index is also bounded to 0 to string length minus 1. So if you go beyond that, it will generate an error. Negative array size exception. So if you giving the size of an array becomes negative, it will generate this kind of error. Null pointer exception. So if you have a reference to some file or something that is null, so it will generate a null pointer exception. Number format exception. Then out of memory expression. That means not enough memory in the RAM. Security exception. So this can be generated in applets, and you can find many more in your books as well, or any online content. So there are two other methods to handle exceptions. So one is throw and another one is throws. So we have used this throws method. So what it does, it automatically handles the exception. So try, catch, and finally is used to manually handle exception. Throws and throw can automatically handle exception. So when to throw? So what we can do, we can throw an exception from a uh, function. So what we have to write? We have to write throws IO exception or whatever exception we want. So if you want more than one exception, you just have to put comma, comma, and comma. So throw IO exception, throws file not found exception, something like this. So you can have so many exceptions thrown uh, using a single throws statement from the main, and we don't need any try catch block. Okay, so we don't need any try catch block. So a entire method can be taken as a suspicious code and handled automatically if you use this throws keyword. And to use throw, this is kind of manual. So in throws, what is happening? Suppose you have read the line, if this particular value is 0, suppose. So you want to uh, throw an exception. So the exception will be like throw new IO exception unable to operate. So this message will be displayed. So this message will be displayed that using this I equal to 0, we cannot operate. That means that was I was trying to say in case of divided by 0. So if you do like something like this, if you don't put try and catch block and you put like this I equal to integer percent int read line, and if I equal to 0, throw a new exception unable to operate. So it will give the user a message that you cannot operate on this because this is a 0. So 0 is not a valid input. So something like this. So this way you can throw an exception. So through an exception, you have to create an instance of that particular class. So that's why we have to use new operator. New operator is used to create instance. So that's why we have to actually use an object. So throw new IO exception. So this is a runtime object. We are creating a runtime object of IO exception and we are throwing that. So in throw, you have to create a runtime object and throw it. In throws, you just have to mention the class name and it will be automatically handled. We will explore more examples of this try, catch, finally, and throw and throws in the next class. So you can nest the try catch block as well. Like inside a try, you can have try catch block, and inside the catch block, you can also have try and catch block. So this is nested try catch. So we are going to explore or we are going to actually check another example with all the details of try, catch, and finally, and throw and throws. And also we are going to learn how we can create our own exception. This is possible in Java to create your own exception. That means we can create our own exception class by actually extending the extended class, exception class, and create our own exception. So in the next class we are going to talk about that, like how we can create our own exception, how we can generate our exception class, how we can efficiently handle exception using try catch and finally plug. Okay, so this is for today's class. I hope Monday হবে Monday next class. সব ক্লাসে বন্ধু আমাকে যা কি বলে এটাও তো দেখতে হবে একটু, আর তো কেউ ক্লাস নিচ্ছে না আমার মনে হয়। ও তাহলে তো